Far beyond the stars, on a planet called Zifra, a young alien princess named Lyra was held captive. Her people, tall and shimmering with silver skin, had always been peaceful, but Zifra had enemies. The Shadow Knights, armored warriors from a distant galaxy, had stormed the palace. Every knight sent to rescue her had failed. One by one, they vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, on a small mining station orbiting Zifra's moon, a human named Eli worked quietly. He wasn't a soldier, nor a hero, he was just a mechanic. He fixed ships, engines, and broken machines, earning enough to survive. Yet Eli had a curious mind. He often stared at the stars, dreaming of worlds far away. One night, as he tightened a stubborn bolt on an old freighter, his cum beeped. A voice, urgent and trembling, crackled through the static. "Help! Princess Lyra. Shadow Knights." Eli frowned. It sounded like a distress call, but no human had ever gone near Zifro. It was forbidden. Yet something in the voice felt desperate, real. Something made Eli's heart race. He jumped into his small ship, patched up with spare parts, and set course for Zifra. The journey was risky. Meteor storms, rogue satellites, and deadly radiation belts waited. But Eli was determined. As he approached the planet, he saw the palace. It was massive, glowing with light that cut through the dark skies. Shadows moved around it, tall figures in black armor. The Shadow Knights were patrolling, unaware that a lone human was approaching. Eli's ship wasn't fast, but it was small and nimble. Using his knowledge of engines and gadgets, he dodged the patrols, slipping through the defenses like a ghost. Inside the palace, Lyra was locked in a tall tower. Her silver eyes reflected the dim light, full of fear and hope. She had heard rumors of a humanist, strange, clever species from a distant planet. Some of the palace servants whispered that humans were clever with machines, that they could do what knights could not. Lyra prayed quietly. Back in his ship, Eli studied the palace walls. They were massive, almost impossible to climb. Shields, lasers, traps, everything seemed designed to stop intruders. But Eli noticed something odd. The doors and locks weren't magical, they were mechanical. Ancient, yes, but mechanical. And humans. Eli knew humans could fix or break almost anything. He landed his ship in a shadowed courtyard, avoiding the knights. The gates were tall, made of metal and rusty in parts. Eli reached into his bag and pulled out his toolkit, but he paused. Among his tools was something simple. WD-40. Eli smiled to himself. Sometimes the simplest solution works, he whispered. He sprayed the rusty hinges, listening to the faint squeak as metal loosened. It was almost too easy. He pushed the gate slowly, it creaked, then swung open. No alarms, no magic spell. Just clever thinking and a little human ingenuity. Inside the palace halls, guards moved like shadows. Eli ducked, rolled, and crawled. Through corridors, every step was tense. Every sound could reveal him. Da-da-da! Yet, he moved carefully, observing patterns. Waiting for the right moment. Finally, he reached the tower where Lyra was trapped. The lock was enormous, but again, it was mechanical. He sprayed the keyhole and the hinges twisted, turned, and listened as the gears shifted. Click, the lock gave way. Lyra gasped as the door opened. Before her stood a human, hands dirty from grease, face determined, eyes bright with courage. "I'm here to help," Eli said simply. No bravado. No knightly armor. Just a mechanic with a plan. For the first time, Lyra felt a spark of hope. Maybe this time she would escape. Maybe this time a human could succeed where powerful knights had failed. But the Shadow Knights were not far away. Their footsteps echoed through the halls, growing louder. Eli and Lyra had seconds to act. Eli handed her a small device, a remote. Control that could jam alarms and open doors. Follow me. Stay quiet. Trust me. They ran. Every step was a race against time. The palace, filled with strange machines and traps, became a battlefield of wit, not brute strength. Eli's knowledge of machines, his clever thinking, and yes, a little WD-40, might just be the difference between life and death. Above, the stars shone cold and distant. But down here, in the heart of Zyphora, a human mechanic was about to change the fate of a princess and, perhaps, an entire galaxy. Eli and Princess Lyra moved through the palace corridors, their footsteps muffled against the polished floors. The air smelled of old metal and ozone. Every corner could hide a shadow knight. Every echo could mean danger. Lyra's silver eyes were wide with fear, but she clung to hope. How are you doing this?" she whispered, glancing at Eli as he adjusted the tiny device in his hands. Eli didn't answer with words. Instead, he pointed to the walls, where ancient gears and pipes twisted like a giant spider's web. "These aren't just decorations," he said softly. "They're part of the palace's defenses. One wrong move, and we're trapped." Behind them, heavy footsteps echoed. The Shadow Knights were close. Their armor glinted even in the dim light, and their helmets made them look more like machines than men. One false step, and Eli knew the knights would strike. They reached a corridor lined with tall glass tubes. Inside each tube floated a strange, glowing substance. Eli studied them. "These are energy traps. Touch them, and they'll alert the knights immediately." He sighed. "Good thing I like puzzles." Lyra stayed close, her small hands gripping Eli's arm. "You're different from the knights? They never thought like this," she said. Eli just smiled faintly. The mechanic led her to a narrow vent at the end of the corridor. It was too small for a normal person, but Eli pushed it open with his tools. "Through here. Quick," he said. They crawled through the vents, the sound of their breathing barely audible. Outside, the Shadow Knights paused, scanning the hall. Below, Eli and Lyra were invisible, moving through a maze only Eli could read. Finally, they emerged in the palace courtyard, under the pale light of Zyphora's twin moons. But freedom didn't come easily. The Shadow Knights had anticipated an escape and had set traps, force fields, motion sensors, and automated drones hovering in the open space. Eli examined the first force field. It shimmered with a blue light, humming with energy. "Not magic," he muttered. "Just a circuit. Let's see what WD-40 and a little thinking can do." He pulled out a small toolkit from his bag. Lyra watched, bewildered, as he sprayed a tiny amount into a small joint on the control panel. Then he twisted a lever, pressed a button, and the force field flickered. Then vanished. Lyra gasped. That's amazing." "You're not a knight, but you just Eli warned, scanning the courtyard. "Not safe yet." Ran past the now disabled force field, ducking behind crates and broken statues. Automated drones buzzed overhead, scanning for movement. Eli used a mirror he had in his pocket to reflect light from the moons onto the sensors, tricking them into thinking the courtyard was empty. "Why? Why are you helping me?" Lyra asked, curiosity breaking through her fear. Eli didn't answer immediately. Instead, he checked the last obstacle, the main palace gate. A huge mechanical barrier, strong enough to stop a tank, blocked the way. Most humans would have given up. But Eli just smiled. "This is why they call us problem solvers," he said. He pulled out more WD-40 and sprayed the gears and hinges. Slowly, carefully, the massive gate began to grind open. Sparks flew and the metal groaned, but it held. The Shadow Knights had noticed the movement. Their footsteps grew louder. One knight raised a weapon that shot a glowing beam of energy toward the escaping pair. Eli reacted instantly. Using a small panel from his toolkit, he hacked the security drone system. The weapon misfired, striking the courtyard wall instead. Lyra grabbed his arm. "Hurry! They're right behind us." Eli nodded. Together, they sprinted toward his ship, hidden behind a cluster of broken pillars. Eli's hands worked quickly, unlocking the cockpit and igniting the engines. The hum of the thrusters filled the air, drowning out the knights' angry shouts. As they lifted off, the Shadow Knights ran to the edge of the courtyard, unable to reach them. From above, Eli could see the entire palace lit by the cold moons. Every corner, every tower, every shadow, he had navigated them all. Lyra leaned back. In the seat, eyes wide with awe. I don't understand. You're just a mechanic, but you saved me. Eli smiled faintly. Sometimes, he said, it's not about armor or strength. It's about thinking differently, being clever, using your tools, your brain, your courage. The palace disappeared below them, a shimmering monument to a civilization nearly lost. But Eli knew the danger wasn't over. The Shadow Knights were clever, ruthless, and relentless. Somewhere they were already planning their next attack, and somewhere in the galaxy new challenges awaited. Strange planets, mysterious creatures, and impossible puzzles. Eli had escaped once, but the journey had only just begun. Lyra looked at him with hope and determination. I think you might be the hero we've been waiting for. Not a knight, not a soldier, but you. Eli's grin was quiet but confident. Let's see how far we can go, he said, turning his ship toward the stars. Above them, Zifra shrank into the distance. The galaxy was wide, dangerous, and full of mysteries. But for the first time, a human mechanic and an alien princess were on the same side together. They could face anything. The stars streaked past as Eli piloted the small ship through the galaxy. Lyra beside him, still trembling but beginning to regain her composure. Below, Zifra became a distant glow. But danger was far from over. We can't stay in one place for long, Eli said, checking the sensors. The Shadow Knights will send more patrols. They'll find us eventually. Lyra nodded. Where? Where are we going? Eli smiled faintly. Somewhere safe, for now. Somewhere we can think. Hours later, the ship descended toward a strange desert planet. Its surface was covered in red sands, twisted metal ruins, and jagged cliffs. A harsh wind whipped across the barren landscape. It looked empty. But Eli didn't trust appearances. No. One comes here by accident, he muttered. If the Shadow Knights know we're in the galaxy, they might try to trap us. As they landed in a shallow canyon, the ground trembled slightly. Dust swirled around them. Lyra stepped out of the ship carefully, marveling at the landscape. It's beautiful in a strange way. Eli's eyes scanned the area. His instincts screamed that this wasn't just a desert, it was a trap. Stay close, keep your eyes open. They moved among the ruins, searching for shelter. The place was eerily quiet, too quiet. Eli noticed tracks in the sand, mechanical. Footprints, far too precise for animals. Someone, or something, is watching us, he said. Suddenly, the ground shifted. A massive metal wall rose from the desert floor, cutting off their escape. The Shadow Knights had anticipated there. Landing, Lyra froze. We're trapped. Eli crouched behind a rusted piece of machinery. Not yet. Watch and learn, he said. Pulling tools from his bag, he examined the wall. It was massive, powered by hydraulic pistons and reinforced metal plates. Most people would give up. But Eli saw something simple, something human. A thin seam ran along the base of the wall. Sprayed WD-40 into it, working the grease into the hinges. Then he pressed a small button on a handheld panel. Sparks flew. The wall groaned, but then shifted slightly. Not perfect, Eli muttered, but it's enough. Lyra watched in awe. You really think of everything? For they could move. Mechanical drones dropped from the sky, hovering with glowing sensors. The Shadow Knight's voice echoed across the canyon through loudspeakers. You cannot escape, human. Surrender the princess. Eli grinned faintly. Not a chance. He grabbed a loose panel from the desert ruins and rigged it with his gadgets. When the drones approached, a blinding flash of light emitted from the panel, confusing their sensors. One by one, the drones crashed into the rocks. Lyra gasped. How? How do you do that? Problem solving, Eli said simply. Patience. Observation. A little luck. NWD-40. The wall's pistons groaned as Eli finished tweaking it. Slowly, it began to descend again. Eli motioned for Lyra to follow together. They squeezed through the small opening just before the drones recalibrate as they ran across the red sands. Eli scanned the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly, hiding more traps. We need to move fast, he said. The Shadow Knights won't give up so easily. Suddenly, the sand beneath their feet shifted violently. A trapdoor had opened, revealing a pit filled with sharp metal spikes. Lyra screamed, but Eli grabbed her hand, pulling her to safety. That was close. She gasped. Eli nodded. Too close. This planet is full of surprises, and they're all designed to stop people like us. They continued running, using the terrain to their advantage. Eli climbed over jagged cliffs, ducked under hanging debris, and even slid down narrow chasms. Every obstacle tested his wit. Every danger demanded clever thinking. Finally, they reached a small cave at the edge of the canyon. Eli blocked the entrance with broken metal panels, giving them some cover. Lyra leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Eli, why do you risk so much? You don't even know me. Eli wiped sweat from his brow. Maybe I don't, but I know the right thing when I see it. And right now, saving you is the right thing. For the first time, Lyra smiled faintly. I think you might really be different from anyone I've ever met. Not a knight, not a soldier, but you. Eli shook his head. Just a mechanic. That's all. Outside, the desert wind howled. Somewhere far above, the Shadow Knights were regrouping. They would strike again, stronger and smarter. But Eli and Lyra had survived. For now, and as they rested in the cave, Eli studied his tools, the stars, and the horizon. He knew the next challenge would be even harder, but he was ready, because a human, a clever mind, and a little ingenuity could change everything. Eli and Lyra stayed in the cave only long enough to catch their breath. The desert planet was far from safe, and the Shadow Knights were relentless hunters. Eli checked his small ship from a distance, some damage but repairable. He had tools, spare parts, and his sharp mind. That was enough. We need a plan, Eli said, staring at the horizon. We can't keep running blindly. They'll corner us eventually. Lyra nodded. Where can we go? The galaxy is huge, but they know how to track us. Eli frowned, then smiled. I know a place. Dangerous, but confusing enough even for them, a crystal labyrinth on a small asteroid. No one can navigate it without getting lost. Hours later, their ship passed through the void of space, stars glimmering like scattered diamonds. Lyra leaned back in her seat, amazed at the endless darkness and the sparkling points of light. It's beautiful. Eli didn't answer. His eyes scanned the radar constantly. He had learned the hard way that beauty could hide danger. The asteroid appeared a jagged rock, glowing faintly with crystal formations that reflected every light. It seemed alive, almost humming with energy. Eli landed carefully on a flat surface, avoiding crystal spikes that could pierce the hull. This place is weird, Lyra whispered. It feels alive. Eli nodded. It is. The crystals can interfere with sensors and communications. Will make it very hard for the Shadow Knights to find us, if we use it correctly. As they entered the labyrinth, the walls of glowing crystal reflected their images in infinite patterns. Every turn seemed to multiply their presence. Eli led the way, using small scratches and marks on the crystals to track their path. Lyra followed closely, amazed by his patience and cleverness. But the labyrinth was not empty. Strange creatures, crystalline and sharp, moved silently among the walls. They were curious, but dangerous. One creature lunged at Eli. He ducked, and used a small device to emit a sound wave that pushed it back. Lyra gasped. "How do you think of these things?" Eli grinned. "Observation and a little trial and error. You learn quickly if your life depends on it." Hours passed as they navigated the labyrinth. The crystals shifted slightly as if the asteroid itself was alive. Eli used mirrors to reflect light in specific ways, revealing hidden pathways and avoiding traps that could crush them between crystal walls. Suddenly, a loud metallic crash echoed through the labyrinth. The Shadow Knights had arrived. "They found us," Lyra shouted, panic rising in her voice. Eli remained calm. "No, not yet, not if we're smart." He quickly studied the paths, noting where the reflections could confuse their pursuers. "Follow me, stay low, use the light to our advantage." The Shadow Knights entered, their armor clanging against crystal walls. Every step echoed, creating false images in the reflective corridors. Eli's plan was working. The knights were confused, splitting up and following the wrong paths. Lyra followed Eli closely as he led them deeper into the maze. The crystals glittered, showing infinite reflections. Eli set small devices along the walls, creating flashes of light that disoriented the knights even more. One knight rounded a corner and nearly caught Lyra. Eli grabbed her hand and pulled her into a narrow passage just in time. The knight passed, smashing into crystal reflections that made him stumble. Lyra gasped, "You're amazing." Eli just smiled faintly. "It's not magic. It's observation, thinking, and using what's around you. The simplest tools can become the best weapons." They finally reached the center of the labyrinth, a large chamber filled with towering crystals that emitted a soft, humming energy. Eli looked around. "We can rest here and plan the next move." Lyra sank against a crystal wall, exhausted but safe for now. "I never imagined a mechanic could be so powerful," she said softly. Eli shrugged. "Not power, cleverness. That's what humans have. Sometimes the biggest difference isn't strength, it's thinking differently." Outside, the Shadow Knights regrouped, frustrated by the labyrinth's confusion. Eli knew this was only a temporary safety. They would return, smarter and angrier. But for now, he had won this round. Lyra looked at him with admiration. "I think, you might really change the fate of my people." Eli's eyes reflected the glowing crystals. "Maybe, but we need to keep moving. The galaxy is full of surprises, and the Shadow Knights won't stop." Above the crystal labyrinth, the asteroid shimmered in silence. Below, two unlikely heroes, an alien princess and a human mechanic, were preparing for the next challenge, ready to face danger with brains, courage, and a little ingenuity. Eli and Lyra rested briefly in the crystal labyrinth, but Eli knew it was only a temporary refuge. The Shadow Knights were persistent hunters, and hiding would only delay the inevitable. "We need to move," Eli said, checking the ship's systems. "They'll figure out the labyrinth eventually." Lyra nodded, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "Where next?" Eli smiled faintly. "The asteroid fields nearby. They're dangerous, yes, but perfect for hiding and creating traps." They lifted off the asteroid, the twin moons of the desert planet shrinking behind them. Ahead stretched the asteroid fields, an endless maze of spinning rocks, glowing crystals, and hidden dangers. Most pilots avoided these areas. Even experienced soldiers risked losing their ships. Eli maneuvered carefully, using the ship's thrusters to thread between massive rocks. Lyra gripped her seat, her eyes wide. "This is scary." Eli glanced at her. "Stay calm. We just need to think like the rocks predict their movement. Anticipate the dangers. Then we control the chaos." For a time, their flight was quiet. The only sounds, the hum of the ship's engines and the occasional scrape against a loose asteroid. Eli used small sensors to detect the position of larger rocks and calculated a path through the dense field. But the Shadow Knights were already there. Using advanced scanners, they tracked Eli's ship and began an ambush. From the darkness, energy blasts shot toward them, narrowly missing the hull. Lyra screamed as sparks flew from the ship's side. "They found us!" Eli's hands moved. Quickly across the controls, I expected this: stay low and follow my lead. He guided the ship into a narrow corridor between two massive asteroids. The Knights followed, but Eli had prepared. From his toolkit, he deployed small magnetic mines attached to the ship's hull. Once released, they clung to nearby asteroids. As the Knight ships pursued, the mines triggered small explosions, throwing debris across the field. One Knight's ship collided with a rock, spinning out of control. Lyra gasped. That was credible. Eli didn't smile. "We're not done yet." He adjusted the ship's thrusters, flipping through a tight passage that seemed almost impossible. The asteroid spun, creating a natural maze. The Knights tried to follow, but Eli's clever maneuvers, combined with his small gadgets, kept them off balance. One Knight's ship fired a laser that grazed the ship's hull. Eli reached into his bag, pulled out a reflective panel, and angled it toward the laser. The beam bounced off the panel and hit a nearby asteroid, sending a shower of sparks that blinded the pursuing ship. Lyra stared. "You really can think of everything." Eli shook his head. "No, just everything that matters. The rest doesn't matter if we survive." Hours passed as they weaved through the asteroid field. The Shadow Knights grew frustrated. Their attacks less precise, their formation breaking apart. Eli's knowledge of mechanics, combined with his ingenuity, allowed them to stay ahead, using the environment as a weapon. Finally, they reached a small cluster of hidden caves within the largest asteroid. Eli guided the ship inside, landing carefully. The asteroid's walls reflected the twin moon's light, creating a dazzling but confusing glow. It was the perfect hiding place. Lyra leaned back, exhausted but relieved. "I can't believe we made it." Eli wiped sweat from his brow. "It's not about luck. It's about observation, strategy, and knowing how to use every tool you have. Even the smallest thing can save you." They explored the cave briefly. Hidden crystals provided energy, and Eli rigged small sensors to detect any approaching ships. "We'll rest here," he said. "But we have to keep moving. The Shadow Knights will return, stronger and more prepared." Lyra looked at him with admiration. "I never thought a human could survive this. You're not a knight or a soldier, but you're amazing." Eli shrugged. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix things, find solutions, and sometimes survive impossible situations." Outside, the asteroid field shimmered under distant starlight. Somewhere beyond, the Shadow Knights were regrouping, plotting their next move. But for now, Eli and Lyra were safe. They had survived ambushes, traps, and relentless enemies, thanks to clever thinking, quick reflexes, and a little ingenuity. Lyra smiled faintly. "Do you think we can really beat them?" Eli's eyes reflected the glowing crystals. "We have. Not with swords or armor, but with our minds, our courage, and every tool we can use. That's how we'll win." The asteroid field fell silent, the stars watching over the two unlikely heroes. For the first time, Lyra felt hope. And Eli. Eli was just getting started. Eli and Lyra rested inside the hidden cave of the asteroid cluster. The glowing crystals provided soft light, illuminating the walls and reflecting off their worried faces. For a few hours, it was quiet. Too quiet. Eli checked the ship. "Can't stay here long," he said. "They'll find us, and when they do, it won't be a simple chase this time." The Shadow Knights learn fast. Lyra nodded. "What do we do?" Eli tapped his fingers on the console. "We prepare. They come, we won't run. We'll use our brains, okay, and everything we have around us." Hours later, the silence broke. Sensors beeped fast, multiple readings. The Shadow Knights had discovered the asteroid cluster. A fleet of sleek black ships glided into the field, weapons ready. Their leader, a tall figure with glowing red eyes in dark armor, communicated through a booming speaker. Human and princess surrender immediately. Resistance is useless, the voice declared. Lyra stepped closer to Eli. They're serious this time. Eli's hands moved quickly across the ship's controls. Good. That means we have a challenge, and I like challenges. The first attack came fast. Energy beams shot through the asteroid field, striking rocks and creating explosions. Dust and debris filled the caverns. Eli guided the ship carefully, dodging the blasts. Lyra, stay low. Hold on. They darted through narrow crevices, the Shadow Knights' ships unable to follow as easily in the dense asteroid field. Eli's knowledge of mechanics allowed him to rig small devices, magnetic pulses, and reflected laser panels that disrupted the Knights' targeting systems. Lyra watched, amazed. I never thought Lyra thinking could be so powerful. Eli smiled faintly. Brains beat brawn most of the time. One Shadow Knight managed to corner them near a crystal wall. Its massive weapon glowed ominously. Eli had only seconds to react. He pulled a small device from his bag and pressed a button. A holographic duplicate of their ship appeared, shimmering in the asteroid field. The knight fired at the fake, missing entirely. Eli grabbed Lyra and moved the real ship behind a massive rock just in time. Lyra gasped. That was brilliant. Eli nodded. It's not luck. It's preparation, observation, and a little ingenuity. The Shadow Knights were growing frustrated. Their leader barked orders, trying to corner Eli and Lyra, but the human mechanic was always one step ahead, using the asteroid terrain. Crystal reflections, simple gadgets to confuse and mislead them. Suddenly, one of the larger asteroids began to shift. Eli realized it was unstable. Lyra, hang on. This could be risky. He steered their ship carefully, using the movement of the asteroid to block pursuing knights. A sudden explosion from a distant rock sent shards of crystal flying, creating a dazzling barrier. Eli maneuvered through it, while the knight's sensors were blinded by the flashing lights. Lyra clutched his arm. I never imagined someone like you could survive against them. Eli smiled faintly. I'm not just surviving. I'm making sure we get to fight another day. That's the important part. Hours of chase passed. The Shadow Knights' fleet began to tire, and their formations grew sloppy. Eli noticed an opening, a narrow, winding path that only a ship small and clever enough could navigate. This is our chance, he whispered to Lyra. Follow me exactly. One wrong move, and we're done. They raced through the path, twisting between massive spinning rocks, dodging energy beams, and narrowly avoiding collisions. Every action required precision, timing, and quick thinking. Finally, he emerged on the other side of the asteroid field, leaving the Shadow Knights behind, frustrated and defeated. For now, Lyra exhaled, relief washing over her. Eli rested, his hands on the console, exhausted but triumphant. See? Little clever thinking, patience, and using the environment. That's how humans survive. Lyra smiled, admiration shining in her eyes. You're not a knight, not a soldier, but you're a hero. A real one. Eli shook his head. No, I'm just a mechanic. But sometimes, that's all it takes to make a difference. Above the asteroid field, the stars sparkled coldly. Below, the galaxy remained dangerous, full of enemies, traps, and mysteries. But for now, a human mechanic and an alien princess had survived again together. Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. What's next? Eli's eyes scanned the horizon. Next, we strike where they least expect. And we make sure they never catch us again. The ship lifted smoothly into the darkness, ready for the next adventure. Somewhere out there, new Dangers awaited. But with brains, courage, and ingenuity, Eli knew they could face anything. Eli and Lyra soared through the galaxy, leaving the asteroid fields behind. The Shadow Knights were still pursuing, but now their frustration was growing. They had underestimated a human mechanic and Eli intended to use that to his advantage. "We can't outrun them forever," Eli said, eye scanning the radar. "We need a plan that doesn't rely on speed. We need a trap." Lyra looked at him, hope and fear in her silver eyes. "A trap? What do you mean?" Eli smiled faintly. "Mean we'll use their own arrogance against them. They think brute. Force wins. But we have something stronger: brains, ingenuity, and a little human creativity." Ahead, a massive abandoned space station hung in orbit around a dying star. Rusted, broken, and dangerous, it looked abandoned. But Eli saw potential. "That's our stage," he said. "We lure them there. They'll follow, and we'll turn it into a trap they can't escape." Lyra gripped the seat. "Isn't that risky?" "Everything worth doing is risky," Eli replied, as they approached the station. The Shadow Knight's fleet appeared, glinting black against the star's light. Their leader's voice boomed. "Human, you cannot escape. Surrender now, or face destruction." Eli didn't flinch. Instead, he landed the ship inside the station, weaving between massive broken machinery and collapsed corridors. The knights followed, confident, thinking the human would be trapped. But Eli had prepared. Using panels, mirrors, and his toolkit, he rigged the station's systems. Cracked wiring and exposed circuits became traps. A simple push of a button turned the station into a labyrinth of confusion, electrical pulses, and unexpected barriers. The first Shadow Knight ship entered and triggered a trap. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and automated defenses crafted cleverly by Eli from old machinery disabled their engines. The ship spun out of control and crashed into a corridor. Lyra gasped. "It's amazing. You turned an abandoned station into a weapon." Eli smiled faintly. "Brains over brawn, always." He led her deeper into the station, setting up more clever traps as the knights pursued. One by one, the Shadow Knights fell into Eli's carefully planned snares, doors that slammed shut. Energy fields that blocked paths, mirrors that reflected. Laser fire back at them. Each trap was simple but effective, exploiting their arrogance and reliance on brute force. Finally, they reached the station's core, a massive chamber with old machinery and glowing energy conduits. Here, the leader of the Shadow Knights confronted them, towering and menacing, its weapon glowing red. "This ends now," he growled. Eli didn't hesitate. He grabbed a small tool from his belt and twisted a series of exposed pipes. Sparks flew. The energy conduits reacted, creating a chain reaction that disoriented the leader and the remaining knights. Lyra, watching closely, saw the brilliance of Eli's thinking. You planned all this?" Eli nodded. "Not just planned. I used every weakness, every tool, every bit of knowledge I have." Sometimes you don't need strength. You need cleverness and courage. The Shadow Knight leader tried to recover, but Eli had anticipated it. Using the station's machinery, he created a barrier that trapped the leader and his followers. Sparks, alarms, and falling debris sealed their escape. The knights were defeated not by swords or magic, but by human ingenuity. Lyra stepped forward, admiration shining in her eyes. "I can't believe it. You saved me and my people, without even being a knight." Eli shrugged. "I'm just a mechanic." But today, that was enough. They left the station, the Shadow Knights trapped and powerless. The galaxy stretched ahead, vast and full of possibilities. Lyra looked at Eli, gratitude and respect clear in her gaze. "You're more than a hero," she said softly. "You're a legend to my people. Not because of your strength, but because of your mind and courage." Eli smiled. "Maybe, but I'm still just a human, and humans. We do what we have to survive and to protect what matters. Stay. flew away, the stars stretched endlessly before them. For the first time, Lyra felt safe, and Eli knew their journey was far from over. But together, they could face anything because a human's cleverness, courage, and a little ingenuity could change the fate of a galaxy. And so the alien princess was saved, not by knights or warriors, but by a human mechanic armed with nothing but his wits and a little WD-40. The galaxy had changed forever.